we got a fresh cup of tea on the go, which can only mean one thing. It's time for our amazing, brilliant 9 till 10 guests. We have all the time in the world, Vassos, to talk to whom today?
There is a very good chance, in fact a certainty, that our next guest is a national treasure. He's the Cambridge professor and fat cat of the stat, whose new book, The Art of Uncertainty, Living with Chance, Ignorance, Risk and Luck, is out now. So please welcome the Dawn of the Data, Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter.
Good morning, David!
Good morning.
So there are stats, that is statistics, and there are stats, that is statins. According to probability and statistics, Professor David, how worried should I be that statins are likely to make me constipated, according to your book?
4%.
And how can that be miscommunicated?
Yeah, because it's described, if you open the leaflet up for statins, I mean, I take statins every day, I'm not sure if you do, but I do, and it says it's a common side effect. And so, because officially, for adverse drug reactions, whatever, side effects, common is anything between 1% and 10%. But when you ask a group of people who were told was constipation is a common side effect, they said, oh, it must be, half of the people or 40% of the people. So that shows the use of words like common can be grossly misleading out of context.
Yeah, okay. Give us some more examples of that. The Bay of Pigs.
Oh, the Bay of Pigs is a wonderful one. So this was 1961, which I can remember just. Bay of Pigs, this is the 1959 Cuba revolution with Castro, and the CIA wanted to topple Castro, and they organized all these Cuban exiles to invade Cuba at the Bay of Pigs, and President Kennedy, when he became president, found out about this and asked for a report from the Army Intelligence, who wrote a report about it, and they didn't think it was a really good idea at all, and they thought it only had about a 30% chance of working. But unfortunately, by the time the report got to President Kennedy, the number had been replaced by the phrase, a fair chance of success. Which Kennedy thought, well, that sounds, that's not bad, and he approved the operation, and it was a total and utter fiasco.
So from this, you say, don't you, wherever you can use numbers, you should.
And this is what intelligence services now do.
Right.
For example, if I'm in the UK intelligence services and I use the word likely, I mean between 55 and 75% chance.
But only if you know that even. You've got to be at that meeting.
Oh, yes, yeah, but that's an approved probability yardstick. It's public. Everyone knows it. That's what all UK intelligence services should use, that phrase.
And you have another example of that, don't you, to do with terrorist threats?
Yes, yeah. Well, this was Obama. Also, when it came to, Osama bin Laden was suspected to be in this compound in Abbottabad. And Obama then very sensibly set multiple independent teams to work out the chance that he was actually there, including, and I use this phrase quite a lot in the book, a red team. People who deliberately take a rather aggressive, pessimistic view, looking for the problems, and to come up with a probability. And they came up with, different groups came up with independent numbers. And the red team said, about a 30% chance he's there. And of course, a more gung-ho team came up with, that we think there's an 80% chance he was there. And Obama, bless him, which was really good, heard these different opinions and then had to synthesize them. And in the end, he said, and he's quoted on television saying, in the end, I thought it's about 50-50, but I went for it. And of course, he was right. And so it's been argued otherwise since then about whether those different teams should have got together and, produce some sort of composite opinion for Obama. I think strongly not. I think that a decision maker should be confronted if there is disagreement between his advisors. He should know about that.
And one of the problems we have as individuals, speaking on from that, is that we don't have an inherent red team ourselves when we're trying to make decisions with ourselves. And we should, and because confirmation bias is not our friend in most examples.
For as individuals and in groups, we suffer from groupthink. We tend to go along with what people are thinking. We don't think independently enough. The people who are really good at this are the Ministry of Defence. Bless them. It's amazing what I found out. First of all, the Ministry of Defence, they've got a whole lot of guidance on red teams, on setting up red teams, and even propose a red team mindset. As you say, even for individuals, you should try to generate that reflexivity, as it's known, the self-criticalness. How could I be wrong? Very difficult to do as an individual. It's easier really to have a separate group of people doing it. The other thing the Ministry of Defence do, which I was amazed about, is that, again, people can be stuck in a particular mindset. They don't think of all the possibilities. They employ science fiction writers. And the stories are really good. You can download them, science fiction short stories for what might happen in the future. Now, that's, really using imagination to think of possible future scenarios, and then you build in resilience against them.
Yeah, I mean, Einstein said, didn't he, imagination is more important than knowledge when trying to be creative. But when trying to predict future reality, maybe not so helpful.
Oh, I think that you need imagination, and the crucial thing is as I talk about in my book, when it comes to forecasting, these super forecasting competitions that people have done, reveal the sort of mindset that make good super forecasters.
Give us a bit of that.
Yeah, I think it's great. The super forecast, for super forecasting competitions, they ask about specific decidable events. So you could ask about, in a year, or for example, who's going to be the next president of the United States, or in a year, what will inflation be, or
climate change.
Well, that's a bit too far in the future.
Sorry.
They want ones that will happen within a year. So what would happen in the Ukraine-Russian war? Specific events, whether they'll happen, and people sit around and of course, they don't say, the crucial thing is you don't say what you think will happen. You give a probability to it, which is what I listen for all the time when experts start pundits start saying,
word salad.
Oh God, I think this will happen. I don't care what you think. I want to know your probability for it, because then I know whether you're really confident or whether you're just sticking your finger in the air and you can admit it. Because if you can't admit your uncertainty, I don't trust you.
Yeah, but then nobody would put them for a guess because they're chatting over in like 9 seconds.
And people aren't used to
minutes.
saying, I don't know why people don't say, I think it's 70-30 or 90-10. Why don't they say that? It's so much clearer. Anyway, they ask people to do that, and then when the event actually happens, they score how good their probabilities are according to a particular scoring rule that I've got in the book and I use for a particular quiz. Now, the crucial thing is they've done this for loads of people, and they found that a particular sort of person scores well. The people they consider they call them foxes rather than hedgehogs. And they're people with very flexible minds who aren't stuck to a particular way of thinking, who adjust their thinking according to new evidence quite quickly, who also synthesize evidence from a wide range of sources. In other words, they're sort of broad-minded, they're agile, they're not fixed within a particular mindset.
So some of the hedgehogs I've met in my life are some of the nicest people I've ever met, and I tend to be a fox. And then there's a bit of a sort of flashpoint there, and you go, and it's very hard to get across to a hedgehog that you're only trying to help, and because you're not sort of fastened to a single position, they might want to have a listen, give you a good listening to, but it's not in their nature to, because you're sort of threatening their mindset, their normal modus operandi.
Exactly. So hedgehogs are people with a fixed way of thinking about the world. They try to fit, as you said, the confirmation bias. Everything they see is fitted within that particular thing. So you could say, sometimes they're political Marxists or something like that, but sometimes they're contrarians or they're libertarians. So
they see the good in everyone. For example.
Yes, that's it. They've got a particular view, and as you said, they can be really nice people, and they can be really positive and optimistic, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're particularly good at forecasting the future.
Useful in that situation. You go, no, listen, I'm not your enemy, but you need to think outside the box here. By the way, your box has very thick walls, it would seem.
Yeah, you are in a box.
Tell us about Ron Biderman's trousers.
Oh, Ron Biderman's trousers is lovely, because I've been fascinated by coincidences. They don't happen to me very much, but and a few years ago, we started a coincidence website. People submitted them, and there's this lovely story that someone says, "Oh, I was in I once had my clothes all stolen when I was in Israel, and I got given this shirt by this guy called Ron Biderman, and then years later I was in this hostel in London. I was talking to a woman just over the table, and I said I'd been to Israel, and she said you've been to Israel, and what have we done? And turned out we both met Ron Biderman, and I said, well, it's great. He gave me this shirt, and she stood up and said he gave me these trousers which were matching. I thought, I don't believe this. We put it on the website, and I thought, oh, this is not. I find this a bit. I think someone just made this up. And then I got an email from Ron Biderman with a picture of him with the trousers.
And so it's true.
It's true.
So in the book, there are certain phrases that you look at. You know, oh, you don't know the half of it. Very interesting phrase, especially from your point of view. What are the chances of that?
Yeah, no, I can't do. I mean, I love trying to put probabilities on the chances, on coincidences.
Yeah.
And you can do it quite often when, for matching birthdays, 3 kids with the same birthday and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And but I couldn't put a probability on
Okay,
that.
but you do the birthday, 23 people in a room, 2 share the same birthday. That is a thing.
50% chance.
You take us through that, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
And you get 22 players on a football pitch. It's even more likely because the demographic of ability and kids being better at sport the older they are in the year.
Yeah,
also
slightly increases, not that much, in fact.
Yeah,
and the interesting thing, which I got in the book, is that there's also 23 people in a World Cup squad for each country.
That's right.
And so at the last Women's World Cup, there were 32 teams, each with 23 people in each team, in each squad. And it wasn't just me, but a number of people looked at it, and there were 17 team squads with matching birthdays.
How did you beat Mark Lawrenson in predicting the outcomes of 10 Premier League football matches on the same day?
Yeah, I was a bit lucky, completely honest.
Well, you say that.
but I used a simple formula. I was using the formula which was about the standard for sports betting in football about 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
It was when the statisticians who developed those formulas were still publishing their work before the models got so good that they just went off into business and formed sports betting companies and didn't publish their work anymore.
That's interesting, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
But now that we know all this is out there more and more, because more of us know more things, doesn't mean we're any cleverer than we were before. We just have access to more information. And people can bet on their phones, and those phones are very smart and can help them with probability. Yet, if they defer to the probability, they'd realise that then betting was more in favour of the bookie winning as opposed to themselves, yet they still do it. Does that speak to our intuition that you talk about in the book over our why when we have all the stats in front of us now, which we sort of most of us do most of the day as far as our lives are concerned anyway, would we still rather go with intuition and our gut feeling? What is that about?
Well, we're not rational people. The word rational never appears in the book.
Yeah,
I mean,
so true.
Yeah, but I do use this nice phrase that psychologists have come up with that says there's risk as analysis,
yes,
which is kind of what I do as my profession, and there's risk as feeling. And as humans, we operate in that spectrum, usually a combination of the two. It's a bit, and I use the analogy again with Danny Kahneman, famous psychologist, has got this excellent book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Thinking in a slow, measured, methodical way, as opposed to using our gut feelings and our emotions. And as he said, it's not a choice between. It's not like one person does one and one. We're all a combination of all of them. And absolutely right. That's what makes us human and makes us so valuable, rather than just automatons that try to calculate.
But
everything.
if you weigh up the odds and you do a bit of research, it's 99.9% most of the time better than just going.
Oh, I think just going with your gut can be grossly misleading.
Because there's the cannonball and bullet theory as well, isn't there? That was one of his, I think. One cannonball. You hope that your one cannonball hits the enemy ship, as opposed to spending some money on 3,000 rounds of bullets, for example.
Yeah, I just don't think our intuition about chance and probability just is not very good at all. And mine isn't very good either. So it's one of those things.
Where does that leave the rest of us?
Yeah, no, you really have to stop and think and work out probabilities. But nobody ever, as Danny Kahneman said, nobody ever made a decision because of a formula. You hope not. Although some, of course, sports bettors do.
Yeah. You want some agency in the process, don't you?
You do, and because, as I try to emphasise in the book, there are efforts to deconstruct a problem and turn it into a mathematical model is always inadequate. There is this absolutely sort of cliched but really good phrase, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So it can be incredibly useful, and we should always try to, in a sense, formalise an issue, think of the options, the positives and the negatives, try to put quantities on them, try to get a feeling of magnitudes, but we can never do it.
Yeah.
It's never going to tell us what to do. So our feelings and, our stuff, the non-measurable, must always come in. But we should always try to go as far as we can with the measurable.
And that's what makes us different from other species. And so why would we waste that? So we are blessed with memory, imagination and linguistics, much more than any other particular...
And computation.
Yeah, and much more than any other species. And you bring computation into it as well, which gets us to if you get 10,000 monkeys in front of 10,000 typewriters, eventually they will come up, they will write word perfectly the whole of the works of Shakespeare.
Yeah, I have got the story in the book when I did a monkey
simulator.
Yeah.
You did your thing, and then somebody else did another thing.
Yeah, and we got up to after this damn computer ran for days, and we got up to "We Love Her," which was one little bit of Love's Labour's Lost. And I thought, Jesus, I can't be bothered with this.
And then somebody else spaffed $2,000 on an even more a real experiment with 5 chimps.
Chimps? This was at Paint and Sue, and this was I think it was an Arts Council experiment where they put a computer in the cage with these 5 monkeys, and
they mostly typed the word S and then soiled
the keyboard.
Yeah,
they rather politely
they just defecated on the keyboard saying, we've had enough of this.
Yeah, exactly.
I read that.
Yes.
It's a lovely experiment.
Please, can you get rid of it?
Yeah. They said that wasn't really the point.
That wasn't really the point. Yeah,
they didn't expect to come up with Shakespeare.
I think the monkeys let it be known what they thought of the whole situation.
I think the monkeys won on that one.
You're taking us for monkeys. So you talk about luck in the book a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, if you just tuned in, we're talking to Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, OBE, about The Art of Uncertainty. This brilliant book, How to Navigate Chance, Ignorance, Risk and Luck. It is a fascinating book. No, it really is. It's
great.
I mean, I read it all in a day,
like it.
which you don't want to do because it will fry your brain, especially if you've got a brain as small as mine. But you talk about luck. Now, there is an overarching slice of luck that we can be blessed with, which is more or less all to do with where we're born, when we're born, who we're born to.
Yeah. What the philosophers call your constitutive luck.
Yes.
And this is just the time of history that you're born, who your parents are, where you're born, your genes, maybe your very early upbringing, all those things over which you can claim zero control.
Right.
And yet we know are enormously influential for the rest of your life.
So does that mean that if we try and give our kids the best start in life, we are giving them as much luck as they can be given?
Well, you're doing stuff. It's the kids who are being lucky in being born to you.
Yes.
I mean, it's very odd because you really have to think about this business, what I call existential luck, because, just the luck of being born in the first place.
Yeah.
Because
I heard that was 400,000 trillion to 1.
Well, I don't even think it's reasonable to count. I deliberately don't put a probability on it because who in advance is going to say what's the probability of this child being born?
Yeah.
We are all completely unique. And in the book, I do this thing which I find really difficult even now at my age, which is to think of my own conception. I mean, thinking of your parents having sex is really difficult. I mean, teenagers just be completely disgusted. But I kind of think, both my parents have gone, no, I can actually think about this. And it was in November 1952 when I was conceived, and my parents were living in this very cold cottage in Devon, and I looked at the weather at the time of my conception, and there was a real cold snap.
Yeah.
So they went to bed
They were
to
having
keep
a
warm.
cuddle, weren't they?
And well done them. So here I am. But I so easily might not have been.
Thank you, Mother Nature.
No, but they might have stayed up another half hour listening to the Billy Cotton band show or something like that on the radio.
Or having a right laugh.
And I wouldn't be here. I don't know who you'd be talking to.
Well, you go back even further because you start with your granddad and an explosion in
1918. Because he had the bad constitutive luck of being born just in time to be a young man for the First World War.
Yeah.
So that generation.
He was bang on time to get killed.
He bang on time to get killed. And then he had the bad, what philosophers again call the circumstantial luck, which is whether you're at the right time at the right place or the wrong time at the wrong place. And he ended up as brigade gas officer for the Ypres section just after the Battle of Passchendaele in this shambolic area in early 1918. And, you just think this must have been the job with the lowest life expectancy that you could think of, because he had to walk around, exposed, paths and things like that, which had been targeted by German artillery, inspecting gas installations. He lasted 3 weeks on the job, and he got shelled. But he had the really good, the third sort of luck that's really important is outcome luck. How in that particular time how it worked out for you.
Yeah.
And for him, it worked out really well because he was not killed, and he was sent back to the casualty clearing station, declared B2, meant that he wasn't relieved of frontline duties, spent the rest of the war behind the lines. Meanwhile, his battalion was sent to the Somme, which was a quiet sector then, but then had to face the March 1918 Kaiser's offensive. And he was a second lieutenant. He would have had to been first out of the trenches, blowing his whistle in the counterattacks.
And then he's got to meet his wife.
Oh, and then he had to meet his wife.
And then all the right sperms.
And then all that had to happen. All their stuff, whatever they got.
How the heck any of us are here at all?
Yeah, any of us. It's an unbelievable, improbable chain of circumstances by which any of us are here. And not only that,
come on,
but all of us are here
yes.
because if this asteroid hadn't just bumped into the Earth 66 million years ago, we'd all be dinosaurs.
Now, you talk about that, don't you? You talk about future forecasting and the chances of us blowing ourselves up or this, that and the other, and asteroids hitting us and climate change eventually going the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of existential risks going into the future. Yeah. And I do talk about, climate change risks and people's attempts to calculate those. When it comes to other things, we can't really do the asteroids, we can kind of roughly do the calculations, right. The chance of being hit by a civilization destroying asteroid. But other things that people are worried about, the effects of AI and so on, it's much more left up to personal judgments, like super forecasters. Yeah. These are just personal judgments. And I really, respect good personal judgments. So people are trying to put probabilities on these things, but they're a bit all over the place.
Yeah, and you say, don't you, that you can zoom out and you can look at patterns and there can be pattern recognition and therefore forecasting from that. But if the patterns don't exist, you create the situation for patterns to happen, and then you can be deterministic in future patterns by creating your own in the first place.
You can, but again, this is all dependent on the adequacy of your models, your understanding of the circumstances. So there's a whole discussion about climate models, and some people say, just got to build bigger and bigger and bigger climate models. But there are other climate scientists, and I really respect them, saying, no, actually, we're never going to be able to do this. And so maybe it's better to stand back and realize we can only be very approximate about this and think of what actual decisions need to be made.
So you talk about the lottery, you talk about people who use birthdays as their lottery numbers, and there's a couple of facets to this particular strategy.
Oh, yeah, well, you shouldn't use birth. The point is, you're so unlikely to win the lottery anyway, but if you are going to win, you don't want to share the prize.
So it's not about the likelihood of you winning, it's the likelihood of you having to share.
Yeah, because, the extraordinary thing is that the very fourth lottery, everyone, there was, one person won the jackpot, and then the fourth lottery, I think 139 people shared the jackpot.
It's crazy, man.
But you need to understand that. You needed to know the layout of the numbers, and the winning numbers formed almost a nice little pattern down the middle of the sheet of paper. And so people had just put a row of crosses down the sheet of paper, and so loads of people won.
And you talk about the history of the National Lottery here in the UK and the fact that, for a good few years, number 39 hadn't come out. It was it was a shy number. So you may want to bet on 39 because its time is due.
Time is due,
But then, of course, the longer the lottery goes on, that sort of bar graph just flattens itself out, doesn't it?
I mean, that's the crucial thing, because you still get people saying, this is a hot number, or this number is due and everything. It's complete nonsense. In the end, they do even themselves out. Not because there's some magical process by which number 39 will restore itself to its rightful place. It's that those early imbalances just get swamped by all the additional numbers coming up.
So eventually things even themselves out.
Even themselves out, eventually,
So, we're almost on time. We're nearly on 25 minutes. It's flown by. We're talking to Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, OBE, about the art of uncertainty and how to navigate chance, ignorance, risk and luck. He's brought a pack of cards. We all want to know, why have you brought your cards, David?
Well, it's this story because we talked about constitutive luck.
Yes.
The incredible importance of who you are born as, and how this determines so much in your life. And my take-home message for that is that since we are all born, we have no control over how we're born, it's all we can say is that we need to make the best of the hand we've been dealt. I like that phrase, and I realise that it's actually very appropriate, that the hand we've been dealt, because we are unique as individuals. We're genetically unique as individuals, irreplaceable, and so. But if you think of the hand you've been dealt as, the result of shuffling a pack of cards and the particular order, you might think, oh well, there's lots of those. That there must be lots of people surely sharing. Lots of those shuffles must share itself. But I'm sitting here shuffling the cards, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to say to you that I am essentially certain that no one in the entire history of humanity has done that shuffle before, ended up with that order of cards, and I'm going to shuffle them again, and I'm going to say I am absolutely confident that no one in the entire history of humanity has done that order.
How can that possibly
I know,
be?
it does not seem intuitive.
But that's the probability.
Until you start doing the sums, and you realise that there's 52 options for the first card, and there's 51 options for the second card, 50 options for the third card. And if you just try in your calculator doing all those multiplications, the calculator's going to run out of numbers at the top. It's going to almost explode, because it ends up being, 8 and then 67 zeros after it, essentially.
Yeah.
This is as many atoms as there are in the galaxy. This is just...
But it just doesn't seem like that, does
I know. You think, oh, surely the same shuffle must come up all the time. No, the same shuffle, essentially, not logically, but to every practical consideration, never comes up again.
All right, we are over time now, but I just want to ask you one more question. People going into today and tomorrow and the rest of their lives, what is one sort of golden slice of probability that could benefit them, do you think, if they bear it in mind?
Oh no. Oh, that's a really difficult
question. Do you want to have a little
question.
think about it? Can we play a record?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let me have a think
we'll
about
have 30
that.
seconds at the end.
Yeah,
all right.
great.
If we can sort of put one pistol of probability in our holster, what will turn it into a golden bullet for the rest of our lives? David's still here. David, give us something we can take with us today in IRL, in real life, that will help us out.
Yeah, I can't give a probability that would help, I think. But I have got in the book about what psychologists have found that are traits associated with lucky people who consider themselves lucky and other people consider themselves lucky. And it's to do essentially with openness to opportunity, of seeing opportunities when they arise and taking them, or going through them, trying to create a positive outlook, and approaching life with a certain degree of boldness. But when I always talk to kids about taking risks, I say, yeah, take risks, be bold. But don't be reckless.
Yeah.
Protect yourself against the big downsides. Don't be stupid, but take risks, be bold. So I think I suppose that's the way I do try to live my life, and it's worked okay for me so far.
It's worked very well for you so far, also in the face of the most profound adversity. And if you read David's book, there's more in there about that. And also volunteering, or not volunteering, being press gang by your daughter into appearing on Wipeout. I mean, that speaks to being bold, doesn't it? And getting out there.
I know. You've got to be prepared.
I thought you were on the celebrity version, but you were just entered into Wipeout by your daughter.
But they like me because I was Professor Risk, OBE.
I know, and you turned up in your gown
and
the mortarboard, and you
that.
trained for it.
I trained hard. I did quite well. I was 7th out of the 20.
And you can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was a Christmas show, I think. It was great.
Yeah.
It was the winter
first
version.
winter Wipeout.
First ever winter Wipeout. Well, it's been great having you here.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, no,
indeed.
you're wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.